So, what is God's will? We often don't recognize the fact that God is sovereign and He's going to do what He says He's going to do. And there's a picture, a story in the Bible that I find and just a fascinating story about God saying about Jacob and Esau that the younger son would be the leader of the older son, and that he would be the one that would carry out the blessing, which was totally opposite of what would happen in culture. And then these two boys are finally born. This prophecy is made while they're still in the womb, and Isaac, he's the father of the boys, and he has sort of a greater chemistry with the older son Esau. Esau was an outdoorsman, loved to bow hunt and bring home game. And Jacob, the younger son that the blessing had fallen on, was a little bit softer. Like he stayed back in the tents, the word tells us. But Isaac is so attached to his older son that he's going to try to go outside the will of God and bless the older son, even though it's been prophesied that the younger son is the one whom the blessing would fall on. And so he tries to bless Esau instead of Jacob. And he's blind at this point. He can't see. And Jacob and Rebekah, they trick Isaac into actually blessing Jacob. They manipulate the situation. And so everybody involved in this whole scenario is trying to manipulate the will of God. And ultimately, when it's found out by Isaac that he has blessed Jacob, the story it tells us that he trembled before the Lord. He realized that he was trying to subvert the will of God and go around it, and he recognized that he couldn't, and that's why the word says that he trembled, and he actually surrenders in that moment and acknowledges that indeed Jacob will be blessed. And then later in the story, he just a few verses later, he repeats the blessing. And all of this family, Esau, Rebekah, Jacob, Isaac, they were all fighting against the will of God. But in the end, it didn't matter that they were opposing it, because sometimes God will break us to make us. And his will was accomplished. Now, they had to reap everything that they sowed. Rebekah lost both of her sons as Esau ended up moving away from the family. Jacob had to go on the run because Esau wanted to kill him. Esau and Jacob no longer had a relationship. Jacob didn't have a relationship with Isaac. He has to flee to this foreign land. And so they're going through this breaking process. And ultimately, God blesses Jacob, and eventually he'll come back home, but Rebekah will never see him again. And so there's a high cost when we go outside of the will of God. And the reason for that is because God takes us through this breaking process. And if he is after us and he wants to make us, he is willing to break us. And what we need to understand about the will of God is it's like an anvil. And we can beat against it, but beating against the will of God is like beating an anvil with wood. And we're the wood. And God is not the one beating us. We're the one beating ourselves against the anvil. And God has set up life in such a way that he wants us to lay down our lives and surrender to his will. And then he will begin to work things out in his timing. And so there's no need for God to break you. Like, just let him make you. Because if not, you're just beating against something that's going to break you in the long run, and all you're doing is causing yourself more pain. The anvil never breaks.